I actually I have one. I know I've already asked you a couple of questions, but this one is relevant to Dragon Con. I know, I'm really sorry. But I'm curious what your nerddom is. Do you have a nerddom? I really like Lord of the Rings. Josh is into Star Trek.
It's his defining characters.
Yeah. Do you have a nerddom? And I think it's okay if you don't.
Well, I like Anne McCaffrey and Dragons in the Worlds. I think I really like thinking about worlds where you kind of see some things that are similar, like they have, coffee, even though they don't call it coffee.
Sure. Yeah,
I'm on board.
I like it. And actually, can I mention another?
Yeah.
Somebody absolutely. I really think you should check out is Mary Robinette Kowal.
We've had her on the podcast.
Was on the show.
Is she not
she was awesome,
amazing? And she, a friend of mine saw that she was looking for help for her Lady Astronaut series, and so I contributed some. I helped recruit some others, but and she's been very helpful to me in my book. But we don't see and can't see ourselves in enough places still today. And she created this world of astronauts where, or people in space, something happens, people who are around have to find a way to leave Earth. And the only people qualified are this group in Alive. Sorry. Spoiler. Are a group of, men, women, different colors, eccentricities, disability, religions, and it brings out all those things and more. I think without, film and drama and good ones, they have to be good ones. That's why Hidden Figures is so impactful. It was a really absolutely. Good movie, well made, all those kinds of things. Yeah, there's actually a lot of really actors. Cool things that we just don't see. Mm-hmm. So I just think she's really important.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, thanks so much for this. I happened to meet Captain Ed Dwight a few weeks ago in Denver, and if you know his story, he talks about almost being in the Apollo program, and this question of merit that you're, I think, alluding to. I think I'm going to make up some numbers, but they're about right. He ranked number 7 out of 15 academically, and maybe they chose the top 5 or something, and there was some question about what it means to have merit and what performance-based, what are the performance metrics that if you are a commander on a mission, you are your non-negotiables for, yes, this person has the right stuff or this person doesn't. And I'm asking, I help fund institutional training programs where we're trying to move the metric on what merit and performance outcomes means. So I'm just curious, what are your non-negotiables for the right stuff when everybody's in the top 0.5% of performance anyway?
I think persistence and heart and dedication to mission. You can teach people, I think, anything if you really try to understand how they need to, what good learning is for them, and adjust for what they're not good at. I guarantee you in my travels and showing up for training, the guys that my backup and Paolo on my crew would show up at my door about 10 minutes early going, okay, what can we do to get you out the door, Katie? In a non-judgmental way, as opposed to like a husband, right? Yeah. But seriously, it's not my skill. You saw me arrive here, almost late, and everybody has their things. But I think if you have that the idea that persistence, because nothing that we do is easy, right? It's always going to get hard, and so I think persistence is good.
And he recently flew on a Blue Origin flight.
He did.
He made it to space. That was super inspiring.
And he became a sculptor. He's like a big time sculptor. Yeah. So that sense of excellence, just shown through that personality, regardless of what came out.
And he's a guy who was, selected by Kennedy to be in the pipeline and go. And when Kennedy passed away, he was out of the pipeline. It's a fact. So I loved seeing him fly. And actually, I was speaking at a high school graduation, and right at we were lined up, ready to go, and right as he was going, and it's a school that really celebrates all the things that we're talking about. And I'm running around showing everybody he's flying right now. This is him. He's in this rocket.
That's awesome.
Dr. Coleman, my name is Ed Hall. Thank you for your service. I have a hypothetical question for you, please. If you were to return to space, and if we had a working space elevator, would you ever return to space via rocketry?
Oh, well, to me, it's all just the taxi. I don't care what the vehicle's like. I don't care what the seats are like or whether there are seats. I just want to go. So, I've been enough. I've had my turn, and so I feel like I'd be a good person to experiment with new things. So I'd be up for that ride.
Nice.
Thank you.
That's fun.
Hello, Dr. Coleman and Walkabout podcast. Quick question. With Sandra being personal to your story and our only X-ray observatory, what do you think is the path forward now that it's been the target of budget cuts at NASA?
Yeah. That's a great question. Thanks. So we've talked a little bit about how, so NASA's going through generally a lot of constrained budget right now. And Chandra is one of the older observatories, and also just sort of to maintain it, it requires a certain amount of workforce. And so there's been talks of it being sort of one of the things that gets culled. I think that there are some other telescopes coming online that they're hoping are going to sort of replace that, but they're not quite there yet, and they aren't the exact same wavelengths.
Right.
So we're all obviously hoping that it gets to outlast its, or to last its lifetime. It's probably already outlasted its nominal mission.
I'm sure.
They usually do. We designed them quite well.
What year was it that you deployed, Chandra?
We deployed it in 1999. It's supposed to work for 5 years. It's worked now for 25.
Woo.
But this is where I urge you to kind of, always listen critically. There's this great discovery that you talked about, right? The dark matter and dark energy. And look at the dates of when that was actually known and published and could have been announced. NASA chose not to announce it before they announced the budget cuts, because then it might seem like it didn't make any sense to be cutting the budget. I mean, I can't speak for them, right? And I can't, but
right.
I just know the order of events, right? And, and just the story that you hear about what's too much, what's not enough, who's familiar with what telescopes. It's always easier to hang on to things that you know and love and have worked on.
Yeah.
There's a lot. I mean, it's hard. There isn't enough money is the deal.
Yeah.
Right? But
yeah,
I think looking at how the news comes out is interesting.
Yeah. It's hard, and it's hard for a lot of these telescopes. It's a relatively small budget to sort of keep them operating. It's not like we're sending up supplies to keep them running or anything like that. So it's really like ground and people operations, right? And so that's the other thing to think about is like we're talking about the telescope, but actually we're talking about like the people who are running the telescope and what their jobs are, and will they have another mission to pivot to, or what do they pivot to, right? So I always think about like who's taking the data and who's running the operations day to day, and how they're going to be affected too. But you can always write your Congress people if you want space things.
Yes, and I think there's a website where you can evaluate for yourself, and I've been meaning to go there. I have not gone, but I think it's savechandra.org.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Some space telescopes really do kind of run out of their lifetime if they're infrared because they need coolant, and that coolant gradually goes away over time. That's not the case for Chandra, which is an X-ray observatory. But as Addie was saying, the real costs, there's a budget. And so NASA's like, well, we want to build a 2020s technology telescope instead of a 1990s technology telescope, and where's the money? I was on the Cassini mission for a long, long time, and
really?
It was extended. Addie's needling me because for some reason it happens to come up a lot in our shows. I don't know why. But in any event, its nominal mission was 4 years and ended up going for 13 years at Saturn. But it had to get continually approved new authorization because it cost tens of millions of dollars every year to keep operating it. And it was like, none of that is hardware. All of that is deep space network, people, programming sequences, figuring out what to do, bringing the data back, figuring out what to do with it. So it's budgetary.
But with a proper, nice budget, that wouldn't be too much.
That's right.
So.
Thank you.
Hello. Dr. Coleman, thank you for doing this for everybody here. I just got a really quick question for you. I'm sure you get it at least once. UFOs, aliens, UAPs. Have you or your colleagues heard anything, seen anything, read anything?
Special Special inside scoop. Today, the truth is really coming out finally
Tell the
right
truth,
here
you know.
on Walkabout the Galaxy.
We did.
Going to finally find out.
We did call the ground when I was on my first mission, and go after a couple of days. We're like, so we keep seeing like the same thing back there, and they're like, yep, Chinese rocket body from this launch. We're like, okay, just checking. Just checking. Yeah. And on my last mission on the space station, I did wake up like just a couple days before we're going to come in and land, and there was like clanging on the roof. I'm like, oh, there's clanging on the roof, and I'm like, it's not really supposed to be clanging on the roof. And then I'd forgot, like mentally, I just had forgotten the shuttle crew was on board and they were on a different sleep shift, and they had started their spacewalk.
Oh wow!
I'm like, oh, it's okay, it's just them, So, I did make a joke about UFOs on my first mission, and I did answer a number of congressional inquiries. Oh no! Because it was really like it was like a joke.
Because of that joke.
Yeah, because of that joke. I mean, well, it was a new year. There were some very new congressmen. They all wanted to be very good to their constituents, and actually, if you look at all the tapes of what we were doing, one of my crewmates, it's our first day on orbit, and he, we pointed the cameras in a way that was really embarrassing, and we suddenly realized that they were still on. We're like, and they turned off astronaut TV because it's so bad when their astronauts are being bad at TV. And so then, into the just sort of like the world map, you hear me go, Houston, we have an unidentified flying object, and it is not very good. And it's just my crewmate Fred
bouncing around inside the space station. Right.
So bad idea. Yeah,
well, I think it's funny.
It was, and actually, it's in my Wikipedia, and don't you dare change it, because it just, then I can see, like I could see when the kindergarten class has actually been, their teacher has read Wikipedia, and then they all draw me alien drawings, UFOs.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah.
Right. Noted.
Hi. So I do have a real question, but before I ask it, you mentioned having a woman's flight up to space, and I just wanted to make sure you've heard the song 100 Tampons.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I promised myself that if I ever got a astronaut in front of me, I'd ask them whether it's true that space smells like steak, how we know that, and if it's true, why it's happening.
Smells like steak?
Like steak.
Oh. I've never heard that. Actually,
have you smelled it?
I tell people it depends on who you were flying with.
Yeah.
I was the new gym clothes police. I was the gym clothes police. I'm like, hey boys, it is that day. We are all wearing new gym. They'd be like, what? I'm like,
it's
what?
just like when you're a camp counselor.
Exactly.
Okay.
I don't think it smells like steak, but sometimes when we open a hatch, like that hatch, like let's say a vehicle's going to approach, we have basically it approaches and it makes a seal with the space station. But that outside part has been in space, and it's metal usually, and it oxidizes some, and it's just this kind of metallic kind of sort of
ozone-y kind of maybe, or
well, it's just not quite ozone, but it's just like this. I don't know. I think of it as a metallic kind of taste in your mouth almost, and smell. And it's because once they come, it still hasn't really had time to dissipate or whatever. Yeah. But that's the only really smell.
Interesting. Interesting. I mean, they have a pretty good filtration system up there, so
they do.
Yeah,
they do.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
I have a question about contacting congressional representatives regarding funding, that kind of thing. I'm not sure what I could say to get through to my own congressional representative who has eccentric beliefs about who's in control of space lasers and things like that. However, short of that difficulty, do you have any recommendations for what we might say in a letter to representatives in Congress to say, I would like to see NASA have a healthy budget, and here's why.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so I would say, if you mentioned the Save the Chandra website, that one I think has a link to say, take action here. So a lot of times if there are initiatives for certain things, there are written letters that are sort of out there on the web or through different organizations where folks will put together sort of a list of here are some important points, and it's sort of a form letter that then you can send to your congressperson typically. So a lot of times, especially when there's broader movements to do something like that, there are sort of pre-existing form letters. On the other hand, just like reaching out about something you're passionate about, the staffers are the ones who are going to see it, right? But if they know that some of their constituents are passionate about something, that can rise up, and they'll see those things, and it can make a place to some extent in Congress and others. There are folks like us that sometimes do Hill visits and talk to Congress folks to say, hey, here are the important science things we're excited about and why we think they need funding and they deserve funding. And usually then we go talk to our representatives or people that are sort of on different funding committees and things like that. But anyone can write a letter or an email to their congressperson. And again, it's going to be the staffers who are going to be reading them for the most part.
But they're going to count them.
But they're going to count them. They put it into a pile of these people want to have NASA funding. Like if that pile grows bigger than other piles, it'll get attention, right?
I've heard that too, that every note that you write, form letters not as much power, and at the same time, still, making a difference. But every letter that you write, short or long, that they're sort of like, wow, your voice is heard.
Yeah.
I mean, it may not change the way they decide. It might, but you certainly, I think it's really good to try.
Especially this time of year, it's good to know what issues are important to folks, right, for the next few months. So,
yes, sir.
I was at Roy Kilgard's talk last night on small black holes, and he uses Chandra data. And it seems like this word is not getting out, but he talked about his studies on these small black holes, and he and his team actually threw out the last couple of years of Chandra data because he says that there's a glass filter over one of the main instruments that has gotten gunked up by some emissions from the engine, and it's caused a kind of a film to come over it, and the data is kind of corrupted. So he didn't even want to use those data in his study. Just an FYI that, there are other reasons maybe why they're abandoning this thing. And I don't think NASA's doing a good job of, getting that kinds of information out. And here you got a big room full of people that are like, Chandra, why are they abandoning it?
Right.
Maybe there are some good scientific reasons. If any of you guys get a chance to talk to him, you should ask him about that. It's pretty interesting.
It's a good point. I mean, it's a good point. I mean, earlier I was mentioning infrared space telescopes who lose their coolant. Mm-hmm. Then you lose the long wavelength abilities for those observations, but you still have some other capabilities that are still in place. So, for example, the WISE telescope, which is Wide Infrared something Survey Explorer, something like that. I can't remember. Deep Space Infrared Telescope had 4 spectral channels. When the coolant ran out, okay, they're like, we're done with what this thing is. But then some people notice, but we can still do this other thing with what's remaining. And, of course, Chandra was launched in the 90s. It's far outlived its mission lifetime. There was a reason there was a lifetime, and part of it was budgetary, but part of it was how long do we expect these parts to last? How long do we expect the lenses to be clear? How long do we expect the electronics to survive? Hubble, amazing telescope. It's starting to, have some creaky joints and things like that is making it, limiting its ability to do stuff. At a certain point, it's a trade-off. If we stop this mission, then we've got budget potential to do something potentially better, newer, shinier, fancier.
We have time for one more question, if it's relatively quick.
I'll take it. I'm just kidding.
Awesome.
Kind of going back to the beginning, you said that the Japanese astronauts would bring costumes up and do things up there, yes?
Well, actually, that the Japanese space agency sent those experiments up. We all did them.
Okay, one, that is awesome, because I'm also a theater kid. 2, what is your favorite story of things like that? Astronauts have their personal gear, things like that. There was a video way back when someone took a gorilla suit up there and scared some people. What's your favorite story of that kind of thing?
I love that guy, but I thought it was a